10, those engines are directly in front of the head of the fire. Buell 10 to West 505.
Mark, that's it. The words come fast, breathless, cutting through wind noise and static. Somewhere behind the voice, a town is disappearing into smoke. They're evacuating the town right now. We're losing it. We may lose it right now. We're out of here. Then the line goes quiet. That exchange, panicked, immediate, and mercifully ending in an escape, is one recording among dozens like it, captured across the Colorado-Utah border region in the final days of June 2026, as a wildfire outbreak of extraordinary scale tore through both states at once. By the time the smoke cleared enough for officials to take stock, 3 wildland firefighters would be dead, 2 more injured, hundreds of families displaced from their homes, and more than a dozen major fires would be burning simultaneously across a landscape that meteorologists say was primed to burn weeks before the first spark ever caught. This is the story of how it happened, and why officials in both states are warning that the most dangerous stretch of the season may still be ahead. The most devastating single incident of the outbreak unfolded over the course of a single weekend, when 3 wildland firefighters were killed and 2 of their colleagues injured while battling a fast-moving blaze along the Colorado-Utah state line. Crews have a specific term for what happened to them: a burn-over. It is one of the most feared scenarios in wildland firefighting, a moment when a fire that crews believe they can outmaneuver suddenly accelerates, closing in from more than one direction at once, faster than a crew can retreat to safety. Containment lines that looked solid an hour earlier can be overrun in minutes. There is often no warning beyond a shift in wind, a sudden drop in humidity, or a wall of flame cresting a ridge that had, until that moment, been holding. It was the first fireline tragedy of the entire 2026 wildfire season, and the loss rippled through firefighting communities across the American West long before the flames that caused it were even contained. Wildland firefighters train for exactly this kind of danger, but training does not make it routine. Every crew that has worked a fire line understands, in the abstract, that the fire can turn on them. Very few expect it to happen on any given shift.
You probably agree. So,
Mark, that's it. They're evacuating the town right now. We're losing it. We may lose it right now. We're out of here. Town's evacuated. The first hill is ours.
Cam, you would probably agree.
Oh my God.
Staffer, he was saying something about making sure we found his wallet. He applied for a loan.
This past weekend, for one crew working the Colorado-Utah line, it did. The fire responsible for their deaths did not start as a single blaze. It began as 2 separate fires, known to crews as the Knolls Fire and the Core Fire, burning independently while firefighters worked to keep them apart. But as conditions worsened over the course of the weekend, the 2 fires merged. Then they merged again, joining with 2 more nearby fires, the Snyder Fire and the Jones Fire, to form a single, sprawling complex spanning rugged terrain on both sides of the state line. Together, these 4 fires, now one, have burned more than 30,000 acres of mountain and canyon country, the kind of terrain where ridgelines block sight lines, where a crew working one drainage may have no idea what the fire is doing in the next one over, and where retreat routes that look clear on a map can be cut off by flame in a matter of minutes. The conditions that allowed for separate fires to become one, and then to turn fatal, were not subtle. Humidity readings during the weekend dropped into the single digits. Wind gusts reached close to 45 miles per hour. And fuel moisture, the amount of water retained in the grass, brush, and timber that a wildfire consumes, fell to as low as 2%. To put that number in perspective, vegetation that dry does not merely burn easily. It behaves almost like a solid accelerant, igniting on contact and releasing its energy almost instantly. Under conditions like these, A fire does not creep across a landscape. It runs, jumping from fuel bed to fuel bed far faster than a person on foot or even in a vehicle can outpace it. Aircraft should have been able to blunt that advance. Air tankers dropping retardant and helicopters dropping water are often the only tools capable of slowing a fire's spread before it reaches a populated area or overtakes a crew on the ground, buying time that ground crews cannot buy for themselves. But the same high winds that were driving the fire's growth also made flying those missions too dangerous, grounding firefighting aircraft for stretches of the entire weekend. That left ground crews to face the flames largely on their own, with far less support than they needed, during precisely the hours the fire was at its most volatile. It's 5:38 in Colorado. One firefighter says into a radio or a phone camera in the pre-dawn dark, "And it's starting. It's burning way in the backside over there." He is looking south toward Beaver County, Utah. In that moment, he has no way of knowing that an entirely separate and, in its own way, even larger fire is already exploding in size on the other side of the state line.
The video doesn't do it justice.
You hear it? Sounds like a jet engine.
That sounds like a fighter jet.
That fire, burning in Beaver County, is called the Cottonwood Fire, and by the time officials finished assessing it, it had become the largest wildfire burning anywhere in the United States. It has already scorched more than 92,000 acres, an area larger than many mid-sized American cities, and its path has cut directly through Eagle Point Ski Resort, a mountain destination that in late June should have been quiet, preparing for a summer season, not standing in the path of the nation's largest active wildfire. The resort has been severely damaged, scattered through the surrounding mountains, in the kind of forested terrain built for exactly this kind of season. Numerous summer cabins have been destroyed outright. Hundreds of residents in the communities of Marysvale and Circleville were forced to evacuate as the flames closed in, gathering what they could in the time they had and leaving the rest behind. Smoke from the Cottonwood Fire has been visible even in Utah County, well beyond the immediate fire zone. And crazy enough, it rained really hard the other day. One resident notes, looking up at a hazy sky, "It smells like smoke." Rain that, under normal circumstances, would have cleared the air instead did almost nothing to slow a fire burning this hot, in fuel this dry. By Monday afternoon, word was spreading of another fire, the Aspen Acres Fire, roaring to life 200 miles away in Colorado, though its full scale would not become clear for hours yet. For the moment, the more immediate crisis remained in Utah, where the governor, surveying the damage from the Cottonwood Fire and the broader outbreak around it, described the situation on the ground as grimmer than anything he had witnessed before. That assessment came even as crews carried out a series of improbable rescues under brutal conditions, pulling residents out ahead of fire fronts moving faster than evacuation notices could travel. Utah is entering this fire season already compromised, the governor said. It is a short sentence, but it points to something crews and officials had been warning about for months. This was not a normal season that suddenly went wrong. It started compromised, and the reasons for that go back to the winter before it. Utah recorded its lowest snowpack and its warmest winter on record this year. Mountain snow, which in a typical year lingers into late spring and slowly releases moisture into the soil and vegetation below, melted nearly 3 weeks earlier than usual. That head start on melting gave the landscape a head start on drying out as well. Soils that should still have held moisture through early summer were instead already parched. Grasses and brush that should have stayed green into June were already curing into fuel. By the time the first sparks of this outbreak caught, the ground itself had been primed for months to burn the way it is burning now. Utah's state forester has been direct about what that means in practical terms. Fires this year, the state forester has warned, are moving in ways that have pushed the state's firefighting capacity to its limits, with new ignitions starting closer to populated communities than in any previous year. There is a meaningful difference between fighting a fire in remote wilderness, where crews have room to maneuver, time to plan containment lines, and few structures to protect, and fighting one that starts, as more of this year's fires have, within reach of homes, schools, and main roads. The margin for error shrinks. The decisions crews have to make about when to hold a line and when to fall back have to be made faster, with less room for a wrong call. 100 yards away and I can feel the heat, one firefighter says, moving toward the flame line rather than away from it, the heat radiating off the fire strong enough to feel from that distance even through protective gear. I'm going in. In Colorado, the situation was proving just as dire. The Aspen Acres fire, the same blaze that had only begun roaring by Monday afternoon, was burning near the small community of Beulah, spreading across Custer and Pueblo counties in the state's southeast. It has consumed an estimated 23,000 acres and forced evacuation orders for 3 communities directly in its path. Beulah itself, along with the nearby towns of Rye and San Isabel. All that's been preheated. One observer says, watching the fires approach across a hillside that had been baking in dry heat for days before the flames arrived. So now it's just going to start running. It is a plain, almost clinical description, but it captures something true about fire behavior in conditions like these. Vegetation that has been sitting in extreme heat and low humidity for an extended stretch does not just burn when fire reaches it. It ignites almost immediately, adding its own energy to the fire's advance and accelerating a front that was already moving fast. Wind gusts near the Aspen Acres fire approached 100 miles per hour, more than double what crews battling the Cottonwood fire in Utah were contending with, and roughly the same vulnerability that had left ground crews exposed during the weekend's fatal burnover to the west. At that wind speed, aerial firefighting support becomes impossible at times, for the same reason it was grounded in Utah. No aircraft can safely operate and no retardant drop can hold its intended line, in winds strong enough to scatter it before it reaches the ground. The cost of fighting a single blaze at this scale has grown large enough that federal emergency funding has now been authorized specifically to help cover it. A recognition from Washington that this is no longer a matter local and state resources can absorb on their own. Along Highway 165, which winds through the fire zone, the advance was visible from both sides of the road at once. Yellow and orange, that's where the flames are coming up through the smoke. A bystander narrates, describing the scene as it unfolds in front of a moving vehicle. It's coming this way. Looks like both sides of Highway 165. For anyone still on that road, the description leaves little ambiguity about what a fire looks like when it has stopped being a distant plume on the horizon and becomes something moving toward you from more than one direction. Further west and north in Utah, 3 additional fires were straining the same already overstretched firefighting resources, each drawing crews and attention away from the others. Near a highway junction not far from where residents watched smoke rise toward Mount Timpanogos, one man filmed the sky above a parking lot. Crazy enough, it rained really hard the other day, he says, echoing an observation heard elsewhere in the outbreak, which usually knocks a lot of the air pollution and dust and pollen out of the air, fungal spores, things like that. But this fire still didn't go out. And it just keeps going. Behind him, he notes, the sky looks a little bit more clear towards Timpanogos, a small temporary mercy in an otherwise smoke-choked stretch of Utah County, and a reminder that even within a single outbreak, conditions could vary block by block, valley by valley. Nearby, the forest fire had grown to close to 10,000 acres, showing extreme fire behavior of its own and prompting new evacuations and road closures in the communities around it. To the north, the Gold Mountain fire, burning near the town of Ure, had expanded rapidly as well, drawing more than 100 firefighters into an effort to contain it before it could reach nearby communities. Firefighters who, like every other crew working this outbreak, were being asked to do so with aircraft support that could disappear the moment winds picked up. And in the far southeast of the state, in the Red Rock country surrounding Bears Ears National Monument, the Babylon fire surged overnight, growing by more than 15,000 acres in a single night to reach a total of roughly 16,200 acres. Bears Ears is one of the most remote and most visited landscapes in southern Utah, a place defined by its distance from major towns and its dense concentration of cultural and natural sites. The Babylon fire's growth has continued to threaten structures in the surrounding area and has triggered road and trail closures across the wilderness around it, cutting off access to a landscape that, under any other circumstances, would be filling with summer visitors this time of year. Faced with major fires burning simultaneously on both sides of a shared state line, each drawing on firefighting resources the other state also needed, the governors of both Colorado and Utah have declared states of emergency. In Colorado, the governor has authorized the deployment of the National Guard to assist fire crews who, after days of continuous, exhausting work across multiple fire complexes, are overwhelmed. The Guard's role in situations like this typically includes logistics, transport, and support functions that free up trained wildland firefighters to focus on the fire lines themselves, rather than the equally demanding work of keeping an operation of this size supplied and moving. In Utah, the governor took a different but related step, banning fireworks statewide just days ahead of the 4th of July holiday. It is, on its face, a narrow policy decision. In context, it is a direct response to timing. The 4th of July is one of the highest risk weeks of the entire year for new wildfire ignitions, a week when backyard celebrations, in a normal year, send thousands of small sparks into the air across the state. In a year when fuel moisture readings have already fallen as low as 2% and firefighting resources are already stretched across a dozen major fires, a single stray spark from a firework is no longer a minor risk. It is the difference between a season that is already at its limit and one more fire that nobody has the capacity left to fight. The scale of what has unfolded in Colorado and Utah, as severe as it is not an isolated event. Federal officials say the country has reached preparedness level 4, a designation on a 5-level national scale that reflects how much of the nation's wildland firefighting capacity, personnel, aircraft, and equipment is already committed to active fires at any given moment. Reaching level for this early is unusual. It is an alert level typically associated with the height of summer, not late June, and officials note it has not been seen at this point in the calendar since 2021. As of this week, more than 36 wildfires burning across the country have been classified as completely uncontained, meaning crews have not yet established even a partial line around their perimeter. But then you point towards the lake, and look at that, one resident says, describing a hazy view of water nearly obscured by smoke. And you can taste it in the air. It's been like a week. Totally gross. Fires suck. Then, almost as an aside, the same voice adds something that complicates the moment slightly. Regenerate the soils of the earth. It is a small, half-joking acknowledgement of something wildfire scientists have long understood, that fire has always played a role in how these landscapes renew themselves, clearing old growth and cycling nutrients back into the soil. That role does not make what is happening across Colorado and Utah this week feel any less devastating to the people living through it. But it is a reminder that the relationship between these landscapes and fire is old and complicated, even when the scale of a given season is not. A federal situation report released this week showed dozens of fires spread across the western states, collectively burning more than 270,000 acres. Nationwide, nearly 3 million acres have burned since the start of the year, a total that already surpasses the 10-year average pace for this point in the season. And the peak of summer fire season, historically the most dangerous stretch of the year for wildfire activity in the western United States, has not even arrived yet. Meteorologists warn there is little relief in sight. The storm systems moving in from the Pacific over the coming days are expected to be moisture-starved, carrying enough energy to produce gusty winds across the mountain states without bringing meaningful rainfall behind them. That combination is, in some ways, worse than no storms at all. It raises the risk of dry lightning, strikes capable of igniting entirely new fires in landscapes that are already among the driest on record, without the rain that would normally follow behind a storm to help contain what it starts. For the firefighters still working the lines in both states, and for the families in Beulah, Rye, San Isabel, Marysvale, and Circleville now returning to assess what is left of their communities, the outbreak of the past several days has already reshaped the season ahead. 3 firefighters will not be returning to the line. Hundreds of families spent the final days of June deciding, in minutes, what to take with them and what to leave behind. And in a landscape still drying, coming off a record-breaking winter and heading into a summer forecast to bring wind without rain, the fires burning right now may only be the opening chapter of what this season has in store. As for the voice heard at the very start of this account, the one who told Mark they were losing the town, then said, simply, "We're out of here." That call ended the way officials hope every evacuation this season will, in time. Not every story to come out of this outbreak has ended that way, and with the most dangerous months of the fire season still ahead in both Colorado and Utah, how many more will is a question no one on either side of the state line can yet answer. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you want to keep up with events like this one as they unfold, subscribe to Storm Strike and give this video a like if it kept you watching. It helps this channel keep bringing you coverage like this. We'll see you in the next one.